For the first time ever, I am thrilled to say we have an official sponsor for the Dirt Talk podcast, and that's Ariat. I've worn Ariat boots on every job site I've visited over the years, traveling in them across 5 continents. More importantly, I have yet to find a single project where working folks, unlike me, are not wearing Ariat boots and workwear in every condition imaginable. And there's really good reason for that, and that's because it's phenomenal stuff. And the more I've learned about Ariat and the company, the more I've loved their brand. So with this, Ariat is offering any Dirt Talk listener 10% off their next Ariat order at ariat.com/dirttalk. That's 10% off boots, jeans, and workwear at ariat.com/dirttalk or at the link in this episode's description. With that, let's get to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dirt Talk Monday edition. I am supposed to be on a flight right now, but American Airlines has let me down yet again. It's an abusive relationship. So since I have nothing on my calendar today, I'm still in Nashville, I thought I would sit down and record some podcasts, try to get a little ahead because I've got plenty of travel in June, and then we are going to be gone all of July, flying around Europe. Oh, yeah. Today's podcast is going to be about my biggest fundraising mistakes. To preface all of this, we initially took on outside capital in 2021. And before I say this is from my recent newsletter. I send out a newsletter most weeks. I've gotten a little lax on it. I've been trying to be more consistent into the future here. We've got big plans for it, but this was a recent newsletter. So if you've read the newsletter, this will be the same information. But if you have not, this is a good one. I learned a lot of lessons on this one. It's been a very humbling experience. So let me get right into it. We initially took on outside capital in 2021, which set us on an often suffocating race for more. And after officially crossing the fundraising finish line, technically for the 3rd time last month, this was my first time sitting down and reflecting upon the lessons that I have learned for whatever they're worth. And it's not just about fundraising. There were a lot of life lessons involved in this 3-year process. So what better than to share my lessons, my hard-earned lessons, with a bunch of strangers in this completely one-sided format? How fun. And this is not going to be a story of triumph, but this is going to be more so how tragically mistaken I was and what I've learned in the process. So these are my biggest mistakes doing my biggest thing in business thus far. To provide more background before I get into the mistakes, it's important to set the stage and explain how we got here in the first place. So in early 2021, Dan Briscoe and I walked into Randy Blunt's office to discuss the future of BuildWitt. And Randy was a trusted customer, and we needed his sage business advice. So this was in Apache Junction in Arizona, Blunt Contracting. Randy was the guy in charge at that time. And little did I know that this one seemingly small meeting would completely change BuildWitt and my life by proxy forever. Before that meeting, for 3 years, I could not get so much as a line of credit from any bank I talked to, whether it was big, medium, small. I could not get a line of credit. And despite their colorful pamphlets declaring their love for small business, they certainly had no love for me and BuildWitt. And it was mostly because only in my 20s, I had no assets to my name, and no assets is no lending. And I didn't quite understand it because it's like, well, how am I supposed to get assets if I can't borrow money to go create those assets? Don't you need money to do that? But no. We need a lot of assets before we're willing to give you anything. So if your parents give you plenty, then you're good to go. But my parents did not. They screwed me in that regard. So I was back to square one when it came to external capital. So as a result, we had to become very crafty on how we cash flowed our growth. And we used a combination of American Express, which gave us about 30 days at a time, and then discounts for contracts paid in full. And so by cash flowing ourselves using these two methods, we grew BuildWitt into a small team it was technically a national reach, but I would say that with an asterisk next to it. We were still a very, very small business at this time. We're a small business today, but we were even smaller. Which then brings me back to our meeting with Randy. Dan and I, we knew we needed outside capital to grow our impact, to achieve our mission of making the dirt world a better place. So we asked Randy what he thought about asking our customers for it. And to keep this very simple, I'll just say that he liked the idea. So the reality of outside money, I didn't quite understand this at the time, but a friend's father, a very successful businessman, once described growing a business to me as living with an alligator in the living room. He said, you feed it or it eats you, and it only gets hungrier. And this went right over my head when he said it, but I very much understand it now. And taking on outside capital is similar to buying a baby alligator. I've never done it before, but I can imagine it's probably pretty similar. You're extremely excited at first. You feel like you're on top of the world, and it's a cool little dinosaur that poses no threat. You show all your friends, and everybody thinks you're cool, and then you start thinking you're cool. So there are, at this point, all benefits with no downside. But the baby alligator grows, and the more it does, the more it eats. So now, instead of little morsels, you must buy entire steaks. And it's certainly not as cuddly anymore. So we get money in the door for the first time. And the alligator analogy aside, getting back to the story, in the summer of 2021, we first had this outside capital. And when you get outside capital, you're excited about it and you start to spend it. By fall, our spending was not slowing. And so rather than cold water in the face, the obvious solution was more money. And so my genius plan at that point was then to meet with 3 companies I knew the ownership of and ask for capital in exchange for equity in BuildWitt. So I was essentially selling a piece of BuildWitt for money up front. I struck out with the first contractor. I struck out with the second contractor. Then the third, which was actually a dealer, an equipment dealer, I hit a home run. And so then we got, after this, an even bigger cash injection. And so we went back to work with this cash and ended up spending this cash as well. And so with some details aside, we now fast forward to the spring of 2022. We needed more money. You see a trend here. You're right. There was a trend. We needed more money. But no problem. We could just raise from folks in the dirt world a third time. It had worked out well 2 times, so why couldn't we do it a third? And that is where my lessons officially begin. So these are my mistakes and lessons learned in no particular order, no organization. Number 1, adjust the plan as needed. We planned for our recent round, the one that we just finished, to go from April to December in 2022. And again, we just finished last month in 2024. And it makes my stomach turn to even say that. Giving up was not an option because it was life or death. But I learned it was dumb to grind myself into dust over a flawed plan. And the initial plan that we had, was undoubtedly flawed. So it took me a while to realize how flawed it was, but we originally made vital adjustments to set up the right deal for everybody. And I don't think we'd still be in business if we had maintained the initial course. So yes, don't give up, but it's key to adjust your plan as needed and to stop and ask yourself, is this working? Is this really our best shot? And if it's not, it's fine to adjust so that you can make it work. If we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here today. Number 2, humility is key, which you're probably thinking, yes, duh, good one. Congratulations, you learned about humility. Duh, idiot. But after raising the first sums, I thought I knew what I was doing. And then I learned after that how wrong I was. Only when I stepped back and acknowledged my shortcomings was I able to make progress. And with this, I still feel a great deal of shame when I think about how certain I felt only a few years ago. And my sense of false humility is startling, but I've used it to ground myself further. So we raised 2 times over. We raised a significant sum in those 2 initial times. And I just assumed we had things figured out and we could go do it a 3rd time. And that was absolutely not the case. And through all of this, it's funny, the more I learn, the more there is to learn. It's more and more true as time goes on. I have a greater sense of legitimate confidence, but I am less certain of things now than I definitely was. And so if I didn't have that sense of humility, if I didn't come back to earth, there would have been no way I could have finished this. No chance. Number 3, lesson 3, ask for help. I would deserve an ass kicking if I talked about all of this without acknowledging the help I received along the way. Initially, I took the weight of fundraising on and I went to work. But as the months ground on, it only got heavier. And I didn't ask for help because it was mostly out of pride. I've got this. Everybody's got their own stuff to deal with. So I'm going to bear the burden of this myself. But then I realized all that mattered was the outcome and not my ego or feelings. And so if someone could lend a hand in the process, I became more than open to it. And I ultimately asked for a lot of help. And thank goodness I did. And so in this vein, we also eventually leveraged outside counsel to better understand our situation. And free from the day-to-day and the emotions, people on the outside could see everything so much more clearly. I see a lot of people, I've been caught up in this all the time. They don't ask for help. And a lot of it is based out of pride. But then they get themselves deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper in. And that's exactly what I did. I just got myself deeper in. But then I realized, hey, this isn't about me. All that matters here is that we finish. And so what do we need to do to get to that finish line? And I realized, man, I need some help. So I need to ask some others on the outside for their advice to evaluate our situation and give us their counsel if they were willing to do so. And most of that counsel was not stuff that was happy and stuff I was willing to hear or happy to hear necessarily. I was willing to hear it, but happy to hear. And then 2, on the inside, ask the right people to lend a hand and get involved. And had I just done this all myself, I would not have done any of this at all. And this was a great, great, great lesson for me to learn. Lesson 4, rejection is the price of admission. When I began fundraising, I thought it was more of a yes game. And like the other things I've read, my stomach still turns when I think about all of the times I heard no on this trail. But I've never met anybody successful who's only heard yes. And rejection is essential to the equation, and learning how to process it emotionally without becoming discouraged is critical. I really had to learn how to process rejection. Because you go into a room, you pour your heart out to a group that tells you no, and then you have to go to the next room and do it with the same heart and enthusiasm that you did it with initially to that first room. And then you repeat it 100 times. And then another 100 times. I don't know how many times, how many people I ultimately talked to. I haven't counted because I don't really want to know how many times I was told no. But it was way more times than I was told yes. And it wasn't about the rejection. It was about me learning how to emotionally and mentally process that rejection so that it didn't eat me from the inside out and ultimately kill my enthusiasm and desire for what we were doing. And that was hard. And it took me a few years to really learn how to process it, but it is so essential. And so if you are able to lean into the rejection that you feel in your life, because your ability to process that rejection will help you so significantly no matter where you want to go, because anywhere significant is going to have those setbacks. And what differentiates those who get there from those who don't is largely in the ability to process those emotions and those setbacks as they're happening. Lesson 5, don't drag people. Ironically, through this process, I spent way more time with the people who said no than those who said yes. And ultimately, we were looking for very particular individuals, needles in a haystack. And had I identified who wasn't that kind of person earlier in conversations, I would have saved a lot of time and frustration. And this is true for us just within business as well. We've worked with people who work with us. We've worked with people that just push against us the entire way. Friction. And the way better opportunities are always those who go with you rather than against you. And so those who said yes, I had to spend my time with them. It wasn't just overnight. Yeah, we'll do that. We're in. But man, did I sink a lot of time and energy in those who ultimately said no. And if I would have just identified who I was looking for before this, I think I could have been so much more effective. And so the bigger principle here is just don't drag people. If they don't want to come along, that's okay. That's their decision to make. That's on them. Go find the people that are willing to walk with you, willing to run with you, because then you can create so much more momentum that way. And fortunately, we found some amazing people that are more than happy to run with us, which I could not be more grateful for. 6, know what game I'm playing. When I began fundraising, I didn't know what the right way to raise money was. And so as a result, we made up the terms and overall process. And I am so thankful where we ended up. But halfway through our latest round, we tried switching from our made-up game to the more traditional game. And what I mean by this is we started meeting with venture capital and private equity folks, probably 50 groups at least. And of those 50 at least, how many said yes? Approximately 0 said yes, because we weren't playing by their rules. And I should have known better. And this was a fantastic education for me. I'm really glad I met with all these people. But I should have known getting into it that there was a 0% chance of success because I was just not playing to their rules, playing on their board game. We had made up our own rules, which is fine, but there's also consequences to that. When you make up your own game, don't expect to then go play other people's games, no problem, because your rules and how you're playing does not align with those other games. And so if you do make up your own game, which I think is fantastic, which is where I think true innovation happens, and I'm so grateful we did it now, you can't go back from that. Once you head down that path, you're on that path. So just realize that, yeah, if you do go change those rules, you better stick to it. And we wavered a little bit, and as a result, saw no success. But like I said, I'm glad we didn't know what the right way to raise money was because had we done it in a more traditional way, I think the future of our business would be very uncertain, which is unsettling how close we potentially came to that. So know what game you're playing. Lesson 7. I have no control over outcomes. I visualized the ending of our investment a lot. So I would be sitting there saying to myself, thinking to myself, oh, it'll be done by July 4th. And then July 4th would come and go. Okay, no worries. It'll be done by Halloween. Halloween would come and go, on and on. Like I said originally, we planned for this to be done in 2022. We finished in 2024. And the lesson here was that I did not control when it would end because I can't make the decision for others. All I can control is my effort, attitude, and belief. And this is hard to accept, especially for human beings. We like to control everything. We like to know that we're in control, but we're not in control. We don't control outcomes. All that we can control is what we do as individuals, what decisions we make, what effort we put in, what kind of attitude we have. And so rather than worrying about others, I learned to focus as much energy as I could on me and my effort. Non-stop effort, because I knew if I put in the effort, if I maintain my sense of belief, I would get to that finish line one way or another. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't know, obviously, when I was going to get there, but I knew I was going to get there by focusing on what I could control. This still creeps up on me all the time. Like last night, I get a notification. I'm supposed to be on a plane right now. I get a notification saying, hey, sorry, your flight's delayed tomorrow. And then I realized, okay, by having my first flight delayed, I'd miss my second flight. And then there's no other flight options. And I started to get a little frustrated. And then I stopped myself. I'm good now with catching myself as I start to spiral a little bit and get emotional because I have no control over flight schedules. I have zero control. So all I can do is just make the next best decision, which is a flight tonight at 7 p.m. and then show up to the office and say, all right, cool. I've got an extra day. What can I get done? Because I don't control things outside of my grasp. I don't control other companies. I definitely don't control other people. And then the final lesson I learned was that people buy people. I would not have succeeded if I had relied only on the facts to raise the money. If I just sent out a spreadsheet and say, here's why you should invest, we wouldn't have raised the money. People invested in me first, and it was in my belief and vision for BuildWitt. But that said, no money is free, and everyone wants a return. So yes, people buy people, but then you have to deliver on your promises. But I realized through this, and this is why I just talked about maintaining my sense of belief. People were investing in me and my vision first. They were investing in also the team and the overall organization. And then we would get into the fundamentals of the business. And the fundamentals didn't always make sense. They're starting to make sense now because we did realize the gravity of the situation and understand, oh, wow, we really need to get on this and actually build a significant business that will create a return on investment that we promised. We're doing that right now, but initially when something hasn't been done before, when there isn't a track record to go show, you have to just pour yourself out to individuals and hope that they're the right individuals and that they see what you're trying to explain and that they see what you see. And all of my meetings I had were always in person. I flew all over the United States doing this, all over. A lot of just day trips too, just get on a plane, go to Chicago, go to Atlanta, go out to Utah. I was flying everywhere for years doing this because I knew that I could not accurately convey what we are trying to do and build with BuildWitt and with our mission over the phone, over email, over a deck, over Zoom. I couldn't do it. I had to be there and get to know these people and really truly over hours or days articulate my vision. So even if you don't have all of the data, even if you don't have the track record, the years of experience, whatever it is, pour yourself into opportunities. Try to articulate the vision that you have, the hunger that you have to others, because there's a good chance others will give you a shot even without the data. But then once you have that shot, you better give it all that you got because you're not going to get a second one. And I realize, hey, I've got one shot at this, so I better deliver. And that's why part of the reason why I work so hard right now. So those are my lessons learned from fundraising. I am happy to talk to anybody that wants more details. I tried to keep this vague because I don't know if the details are all that relevant right now or important, but the lessons I learned along the way, I will carry with me for the rest of my life. This was by a long shot the hardest thing I have ever done in life and in business. It was a grueling few years, starting in 2021 to now. It was just non-stop. And I'm not saying that it was harder than being a welder. It's not, but just mentally, I had never been through anything this heavy or grinding before. And I'm still exhausted. I'm still worn down from it. But I at least wanted to, now that the dust is starting to settle, share some thoughts with you all. So if you have questions, you want to talk about any more of this, you can send me an email, Aaron, Aaron @buildwitt.com. If you want to hear about other things from our business, if you want me to talk about other things on the podcast, you can send your questions or ideas to dirttalk@buildwitt.com. And with that, we'll see you on the next one. Stay dirty, everybody.